Welcome to the Build a Mind podcast. I'm Joel Thomas.
And I'm Kalen Folk.
The Build a Mind podcast today is brought to you by mcftools.net. MCF Digital Intelligence Platform helps oil and gas operators and Bitcoin mining entrepreneurs evaluate stranded gas in 3 paths. Sell it, electrify it, or mine Bitcoin with it. MCF Digital offers you 5 free calculators to thoroughly analyze any stranded gas site so that you can make the most profitable decision. Go run the math at mcftools.net. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about Bitcoin mining and dive into the world, hit up our wonderful Telegram channels. Get all of the best deals, learn everything you could possibly want to know about Bitcoin mining. It's all on Telegram, all in real time with thousands of people all across the globe. So that being said, we've got a really cool guest on. Kalen, how you doing?
Doing good, man. I'm excited I'm to kind of learn the intricacies of what goes on behind the scenes of a pool and how it's all created. Managing a larger site, I'm just kind of copying and pasting pool and worker info. I don't really understand the background of it. So got some good questions and ready for some answers.
Awesome. Well, we've got Matt Weinberg from Atlas Pool, and Atlas Pool is a solo mining pool. So Matt, we're going to welcome you to the podcast.
How's it going?
Hey guys, nice to be here.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you so much for coming on. We hung out at Bitcoin Vegas a couple weeks ago, and we had a really interesting sit down at a table in a very loud, wild setting in between beaches. And it was really fascinating conversation. And you were telling me about Atlas Pool and how you set it up and built it and the problems with other pools and stuff. So why don't we kind of dive in? Do you want to maybe tell us your story a little bit and give us your background, and then tell us how you got into creating a Bitcoin solo mining pool?
Yeah, definitely. So I bought my first Bitcoin miner, a home solo miner, just for fun, just to try it out. And I did that around October 2025. And the first thing I did is try to connect it to a pool. And when I started looking at some of the pools that were out there, and to be clear, I'm not disparaging other pools, but I just felt that there was an opportunity to do something a little bit different, a little bit better. And so I started working on it. My background is network and systems engineering for like large scale internet infrastructure. So I kind of wanted to take my experience, my knowledge in that space and try to apply it to a pool that was focused on availability, which is just another word for uptime, and performance, like a really performant pool that was globally distributed and made available to anybody around the world. And there's no preference to anybody in the world. It should always just work and be fast for wherever you are. And that wasn't necessarily the case for some of the other pools that were out there. So I built the pool, got it going with some friends, and tested it out. And here I am about 6 months later, and has I'm trying to think now, like 1,500 active miners using it right now.
That's fantastic. Well, I signed up this morning for it with my BitAxe, and I was trying to figure out all that stuff. And as a non-technical, non-programming person, I think I got it right. It looked like it's hashing. So we'll talk about that. But there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And so could you maybe break down some of the, how does a solo mining pool work in the first off, from from a technical standpoint? I mean, I know you point your BitAxe at it, and hopefully you hit a block and then it transfers stuff, Bitcoin to your wallet if you hit one.
Yeah, I mean, pools have been around for a real long time. Solo pools are just really an all or nothing proposition. So if your miner is lucky enough to generate a hash that exceeds the current network difficulty, then congratulations, you've mined a block, and the pool takes care of talking to the Bitcoin node and making sure that gets propagated, and ultimately your wallet gets paid. So that's really what the pool does. The pool also kind of distributes the work to all the different miners that are connecting to it. It generates something called a block template, and that block template is what's used by the miner to basically hash through a certain problem space. Really, hashing is really, and I have some articles about this and I'm happy to share about it later, but basically when you hash, if you're looking for a hash that has a lot of leading zeros, A hash is a SHA-256 function that generates a big number, call it that. And if there are a lot of leading zeros, if there's a certain number of leading zeros, if it exceeds what's the current network difficulty, then you've mined a block. And the network difficulty changes approximately every 2 weeks based on the number of miners that are out there hashing on the network right now.
So when it's the pool is acting as the middleman between the two, but in a typical pool setting, everybody's pointing their miners to it and they're getting paid out daily.
You're right.
So how is it determining, like, is it the same in the sense of each separate miner is getting a different block template, or are you sending, so it's still like it's semi-random and luck based in the sense of, are you going to be the one on the solo pool to get the right block template as well? Is there any way that you could give every miner the same block template, or would that be kind of like pointless? Because then you're only getting one attempt across the whole pool every 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, different templates are being handed out. And the template includes basically enough work for the miner to grind away, and it will find a block or it won't before the next block is found. And when the next block is found, the pool then signals all the connected miners and says, "Hey, heads up, a block has been found. Here's a new block template. Go hash away." So that's how it works. A traditional pool, you're right. You made a comment about you get some amount of sats every day. They keep track of the amount of work that you do, and then you get paid proportionally to the amount of work you do. So, if there's 10 miners connected to the pool and you did about 10% of the work, then if a block is found, you get paid 10% of the proceeds. With solo mining, it's an all or nothing proposition. So everybody could be connected to the pool, but whoever finds the block gets the entire block reward minus the 1.5% fee that I charge for the pool itself.
That was going to be another question later on, is what percentage fee that you take off. I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about 1.5% after they hit a block, right?
I'm not doing this to make money, right? My goal is to break even. My wife calls this my expensive hobby. So if I can just, I haven't hit a block yet. It's hard, right?
For sure.
But when that happens, yes, I would get 1.5%. Some fees out there charge more. There's a few fees out there that are even free. I will say sometimes you get what you pay for.
Sure.
Some of the ones that have no fees also maybe aren't as globally distributed as Atlas Pool is, or maybe they don't have the same uptime that Atlas Pool does.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Because you've mentioned that a couple times. So what are some of the challenges other pools faced? Or maybe a better question is, like, I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I always look at things as problems to be solved. When you looked at the other pools and you were going down that rabbit hole, what were some of the opportunities that you saw where you're like, I feel like I could bring something fresh and interesting to the market?
The single biggest thing that was different about Atlas Pool, and the thing that was fresh, to answer your question, was how Atlas Pool is distributed globally. Most pools literally are just a single server at one location. And no matter where you are in the world, if that server is located in the United States and I'm in Australia, then I'm traveling a really far distance to talk to that server. There are some pools that have multiple locations, but then I have to configure my miner. If I'm in Australia, I need to point to their Australian instance. If I'm in North America, I need to point to the North American instance. And it starts getting complicated for some users as well. Additionally, those pools that have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 sites don't aggregate the stats typically into one location, which is something that Atlas Pool does. So no matter where you are, all the stats are made available in one place on atlaspool.io. So the latency problem. So why is it important to be globally distributed? Because latency does impact something called rejected shares or stale shares. Um, Rejected shares are typically when your miner is hashing away at a problem space when a block has already been found and you're not aware of it. Now, typically that amount of time is very small, but you want it as small as possible. And milliseconds literally matter. Sometimes when a block is being found every 10 minutes and there's a possibility of a stale share. Stale share is basically wasted work. Your miner was hashing away when the network had already moved on to another block, for example. So by reducing that latency, even just a little bit, you're increasing the amount of work that your miner is doing, which is ultimately what you want, right? You want your miner to be doing legitimate work with the hopes of finding that block.
So why do you think some of these other pools aren't globally distributed then? Meaning that it seems like, I mean, maybe it's just obvious in hindsight, but as you're describing to me, I'm like, you're right. Because I'll give you an example. If you go to AWS, right, and you want to download, say, a video or something like that, they'll have like an Asia server, they'll have a North America server, they'll have a South America server, a Europe server, etc. So what do you think?
Yeah, I use AWS, so I'm very familiar with AWS. Why don't they do it? Complexity, cost are probably two of the biggest drivers. It does introduce some amount of complexity in administering it. There is an additional cost in deploying it to all these different locations. Atlas Pool is deployed to 9 different locations worldwide. It's the only pool that has a Stratum server on 6 continents. So no matter what continent you're on, you will be talking to a Stratum server in that continent. There are a few other pools that do something similar to what I do with a technology called Anycast, but what they really do is they have an entry point in somewhere close to you, but then they backhaul the traffic back to some other continent, which defeats the whole purpose of the latency play. Um, so when you look at a pool, you can check the ping time, but really, what you really care about is the amount of time it takes your miner to connect to the actual Stratum service itself. That's the more valuable measurement. And so I would encourage people, and I've written some tools to allow people to test this on their own as well from their own home network. I'll include that and send that to you as well.
Yeah, and we'll drop all that down in the description for anybody who's curious on that. I wanna back up just a little bit to the block templates and how those are handed out and how they're decided, because you see a lot on social media of people like configuring their own block templates and assuming that gives them a better like a better chance of finding the block. Is there any truth to that? Are you playing with the block template, and how is it generated if you're not creating them by hand?
Yeah, so under the hood, I'm using CK Pool's Stratum server. CK Pool is the OG pool. Okay,
Yep.
and hats off to Concavalis, who basically created the software and operates the CK pool itself. That's what generates the templates. There are other ways of doing it with Datum. You can basically create templates locally. It's a different way of doing things, and there are proponents for that who, if you truly believe in the sovereign, approach to Bitcoin, you want to generate your own templates, that's cool too. And let me be clear here, I'm not saying that any one solution is better or right than the others. Some people will say one is better than the other, but what was I about to say? I'm trying to remember. I drew a blank here.
You were going into like they're right now they're going off of CK's Stratum.
Yeah, so that's right. So under the hood, I have CK Pool, but there is no concept of you get better luck if if that were the case, everybody would do that.
Right.
Okay.
That was kind of my assumption on
on
the matter.
It's pure luck ultimately. In the end, it's just if your hash is, that magic hash that has a certain amount of difficulty that beats the current network difficulty. And the network difficulty is published as part of the Bitcoin protocol. Right now, as we record this, I think it's approximately 136 T. And so most of your hashes, virtually all of your hashes that your miner generates, are below that number. If it's above that number, congrats, you've mined a block.
Playing around with the BitAxe, running it for maybe 2 or 3 months. I think the best we ever hit is like 4.4 G.
It's hard. It's hard. It's really hard, and that's why the protocol itself adjusts, like I said, approximately every 2 weeks based on how much hashing is going on. But yeah, it's a hard thing. They call solo mining sometimes lottery mining as well, because it's it's just really just pure luck if you're going to hit.
So what do you think about, some people say that solo mining is the path forward for network decentralization, and it's, pretty much the answer to all of the problems or potential, we'll call it potential threats here in the Bitcoin mining world. What do you think?
It's a thorny topic, but I will say that there are some pools out there that command a huge amount of hash rate. And when you put a couple of those pools together, then they have strong access to the whole network, and the whole point is you do want decentralization. Decentralization ultimately is a good thing, and in the grand scheme of things, the hash rate that Atlas Pool commands from all its miners is a drop in the bucket compared to the global network hash rate, right? So yeah, I think whether you mine on your own with your own local node, which we didn't really talk about, but you mine through a smaller pool like Atlas Pool. I think those are ideal. I think that's a kind of the better way of supporting the Bitcoin network.
One big takeaway that I saw at that conference was how many people were making like integrated home mining devices. For example, you saw water heaters, pool heaters, um, all types of different Bidax and solo miners. I mean, there's a lot of people that are doing interesting things in the heat reuse space. And it's I feel like it's growing rapidly. I mean, because just going from like mining disrupt, I mean, I know it's a smaller conference, but going from mining disrupt to Bitcoin Vegas, it was like really mind blowing to see how many cool people had just really, really cool projects. And they're all very, very passionate about network and decentralization. So that,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of good things going on out there, and yeah, heat capture is a good application of it as well. There's lots of new small mining devices coming out with various hash rates that give people at home the opportunity to do this as well. It's a more of a intimidating process to buy some of these industrial miners, and realistically, running them out of your house is not really something that's going to be very social when you have that thing humming at full speed. So yeah, like these small mining devices are quiet, and they're great. It's a great way to enter the network to learn. I would suggest people just give it a try. You can buy devices as cheaply as $60, $60 US dollars these days.
Yep.
So there's tons of options out there.
So how did you even, I mean, again, you have a background in networking. How do you even, if somebody wanted to make a pool, how would you even start learning about that stuff? Because again, Bitcoin is like one of those things. You start learning about Bitcoin, then you get 100 hours deep in it. You're like, oh yeah, you think you know something about it. Then you get like 500 hours deep and you're like, wow, I know nothing. And you realize how much there is to learn. And, we've been doing this podcast here for a while, and we have such a wide variety of guests, and every time it's just like, I thought I knew about Bitcoin. I know nothing. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah, there are several pools out there that are open sourced, including CK Pool, which is what I used. I use a modified version of CK Pool to operate my own pool. But there's others out there too, and if that's something you want to learn, then it's available for you. You can go ahead and do that. There's also an option to run it. You can run your own local node, your own Bitcoin node at your own home, and run your own small little pool server, and then point all your miners to that as well. That's even more decentralized. And for those people who want to have the time, the money, the inclination, the technical know-how to do that, then go for it. I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that. I built Atlas Pool for those who, want to get going quickly, want a good solid pool, and make it available through the internet.
Earlier, you were talking about just luck based in the sense of like the block template, but since you said you use Solo OCK as kind of your base to build off of, I know CK pool shows like luck in a number, like in a percent. What does that mean? Like, what is that quantifying to say you're 0.1% luck?
So a pool can keep track of how much total accumulated work has been done, right? So the number of miners, and basically miners report the work that they're doing through this concept of what's called a share. And this share has to be a certain difficulty for it to be accepted by the pool. The pool can adjust the difficulty over time. You want a sweet spot whereby the miner is talking to the pool and submitting a share once every, give or take, 6 to 10 seconds. And so the pool can keep track of the total amount of work. Now, if the network difficulty is 136T, then on average, you need to do about 136T worth of work to find a block. Now, you can do it sooner than that, and you're lucky. Or you might have to do more work than that, and you're unlucky. And you can do some math around that as well. So really, the luck or unluck factor is just really based on how much work you've done compared to what's expected in order to find a block.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's a fun number. It's something to look at, but all it is, it's really just tied to literally how much work you've done and are you close to the amount of expected work in order to find a block.
Cool.
Very interesting. Okay, I think we should talk about how to set up a bidax and change pools. So I'm going to add this here. I was starting out this morning, and this is off my little bidax in my basement, and I had it set to public pool because this was just the default setup. And I was going through these different settings, and I was looking on your website, and I switched to Atlas Pool. And I kind of realized when I was going through this, I was like, this just going through this process gave me 500 questions. Like I said, because I'm not a technical networking type person. Like I don't, when I read this type of documentation, it's kind of like, I get it, but I don't. So, okay. So the Stratum host, that would be like the place the pool goes, correct?
Let's go through this. Before we even start, I will say, one of the things that I've tried to do is just educate people about Atlas Pool and what's out there compared to some of the other pools. All the bidax devices are pre-shipped with public pool and CK pool as a backup. So the only people who have come to Atlas Pool are people like you who decided, you know what, I've checked out my options and I'm interested in Atlas Pool and I'm going to switch to Atlas Pool. So that's kind of how we start. Now, the Stratum host is ultimately the name of the server, the Stratum server that you're going to connect to. So for Atlas Pool, it would be solo.atlaspool.io. And this, by the way, is available. If you go to the atlaspool.io webpage, there's a link that says, I think, Connect Now. If you click on that, it has all the directions right there as well.
Yeah, so I copied and pasted that in, and then the port number. So what does that do, or what does that mean?
Yeah, the port number is just the port in which the Stratum server is listening on. For Atlas Pool, it's port 3333, so 4 threes. And that's just how you connect, basically. Everything has a unique port base. Well, protocols use well-known, well-defined ports. HTTP is port 80, HTTPS is port 443. Stratum really can use any port, but a lot of pools use port 3333.
Okay. So you enter the port number, and then the user, that is your Bitcoin wallet address if you find a block.
Yeah. So this is, you definitely want to put in your wallet address here. Now you can append a worker name to this so that, let's say you have multiple bidaxes, and when you log on to the Atlas Pool dashboard, you want to be able to recognize, the names of the different servers or bidaxes that you have. Just append a period and then a unique name to it. So call it .bidax1 or .bidax2. And then what you'll see when you log into Atlas Pool is the actual name of the worker in your dashboard.
So a question I have, obviously, just like sending a Bitcoin transaction, you just copy and paste your wallet address. But is there a way to verify that your wallet is actually hooked up correctly to your bidax?
You can verify, yes. So ultimately you can verify how a pool pays out. And then once you start the mining process, you can also connect to that pool, and the pool should show you statistics that you're actually doing work on that pool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. So, that part I understand, because it looks like it's hashing and all that
Yes.
stuff. But I'm just like, how do I know if I found the block?
Oh,
it just makes me nervous entering something into a box and be like, okay, cool, we're good.
well, you should be able to see that hashing is actually occurring, right? And
Yeah.
if you see the hashing occurring, you also, should hopefully be paid properly to that wallet address if a block is found. And so if a block is found, I know the bidax has a little pop-up that if a block is found, you would also be able to check out your address, and you'll see 3 point something Bitcoin there.
So I guess it would just be to verify it once you log in on the pool, double check that the worker or the username is
right.
correct to your address.
That's
But
right.
then is it an automatic process for, say, if you do solve a block, that the Bitcoin gets automatically sent to that address?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the block template, remember back to the block template, includes your address in the block template. So you can inspect the block template, and the block template even includes in there your address that gets paid 98.5% of the proceeds. And then it also includes the wallet address of Atlas Pool. which gets paid 1.5%. And you can see that in the block template. And I have some tools out there to let you inspect the block template of any pool, not just Atlas pool. So you can see and verify that the payout is what you think it is.
So you're just so to do that, I'm guessing since you're getting a new template every block, every 10-ish minutes, so are you like wire sharking it, like coming through, and then you're just grabbing it and then able to.
You don't even need to do that. You can, like I said, you can run I have a Python script that literally will connect to the destination Stratum server and
Oh.
inspect the actual block template that's returned, and you can verify that your address is in there. Or
Is that what
address.
the pool password protects from? Because
No.
I've never understood the pool password. Up at work, it's like very simple and basic. So
some pools require authentication of some kind, and that's what the password field is for.
okay.
But most pools, not there are some that do it, but Atlas Pool doesn't do it. And
Question about that. Okay, so when I entered it in here, I left the password blank like it recommended, and then the BitX iOS wouldn't take it. It didn't. I had to enter a password. So is that going to mess something up?
No, the pool will ignore it. You can put whatever you want in there. It doesn't really matter.
All right. I was hoping it was something that easy, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, why? This doesn't make any sense. One instruction says this, and I'm trying to. Okay. Yep. So what about the suggested difficulty? And before we riff on that, I realize I'm going to go grab my phone. I got to get up out of my chair while you guys riff on this, and I'm going to airdrop the picture I took of the Atlas pool config here.
Sure.
And I'm going to get that on the screen here in a second while you answer that question. So the suggested difficulty. Again, was just entered as default by 1,000, but you recommended 2,000. What is changing that do? How does that even work?
Yeah. So the difficulty, remember what I talked about how often shares are submitted to the actual pool? Yep. The higher the difficulty, the slower it will be to submit that share, but it's also dependent on your hash rate as well. So the higher your hash rate, of course, the more frequently you're going to find a difficulty that exceeds that threshold. So ideally, you are submitting a share every 6 to 10 seconds. Now, that's controlled by two things: the difficulty and the hash rate of the miner itself. Most pools, many pools, including Atlas Pool, do something what's called VARDIF, variable difficulty, where it will adjust the difficulty based on the perceived hash rate of the miner. So you don't ever really have to worry about this because it will adjust it as needed. For a BitX's hash rate is low enough that 2,000, there is a floor for Atlas Pool. The difficulty will never drop below 2,000. So for a BitX, it's just going to lock in at 2,000. But for devices that have more hash rate, what happens over time is it will drift upwards, and that difficulty changes automatically. And it's not something you have to worry about. It's just automatically done by the pool.
Okay.
I was curious about that because I've never seen a suggested difficulty on a industrial ASIC.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Normally what happens is that the pool server just keeps track of how fast the shares are coming in and then adjusts the difficulty accordingly.
Cool. I mean is it mandatory that you're submitting a share every 6 to 10 seconds, or like why not set this suggested difficulty all the way up to 147T? Like why not?
So if you jacked it up to 147T, you would basically never be submitting a share. And a share is almost like a heartbeat or a way of the miner telling to the pool, hey, I'm still working and I'm legitimately working here. And then the miner also figures out what your hash rate is based on the submission rate of shares. Okay.
So if sorry, I'm cutting you off. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the pool doesn't know what the miner's hash rate is. The way it calculates that is based on the rate of share submission and the difficulty. And once it knows those two numbers, then it can calculate what the hash rate is of each miner.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So technical. makes my brain spin. So I've got the so this is a screenshot I took from when I changed this over this morning. Obviously you could see it was fighting me on the password, and I just had to put something in there. But this all looks correct. So to go to Atlas Pool, you'd be solo.atlaspool.io, Stratum port 3333, then your wallet, any password that it requires, and then suggested difficulty at 2000.
Yeah, I do recommend that you add a worker name and append that on your on top of the wallet. So in the user field, it will be wallet address, period, no space, just a period, and then some kind of a unique name for your worker, and you can call it whatever you want. But that way, if you have more than one miner, you'll see each miner listed in the dashboard of Atlas Pool. Otherwise, it will just say unnamed worker, and they all get kind of collapsed into one single stat, which is not what you want.
No way
Gotcha.
to
You need
dictate an underperforming miner or anything.
Yeah, so it's nice just to see how each miner is doing, that they're all talking to the pool, what the hash rate is for each pool. You can also keep track of the best share per miner as well. So you want to give it a unique name per miner. That's what I recommend.
Okay, very interesting. So that all makes sense. Again, that's a lot.
I will tell you this. Listen, when I started this process, it's not like I was an expert in everything I'm talking about right now, and I'm still learning as I go. But that being said, like that's part of the fun, right? Is just doing this and asking questions and AI is pretty good, by the way, for just asking questions. If you don't understand something, it's typically pretty good, and I would suggest that people try that out as well if you have questions about something with Bitcoin.
The new Google.
That's right.
Yeah.
Going back to the real quick on the suggested difficulty, how you said like the bit axis come pre-configured with 1,000 as default, so
Yeah.
other pools are using that. With you setting it to 2,000, is that kind of just stopping the lesser shares that are definitely not a block coming to your servers so that it's cheaper on your end and it's less? It's not like the user is losing anything off of
The user's not losing anything, but what it does do is it prevents some of these really small miners from connecting to the pool because they won't have the hash rate to submit a share at a frequency that the pool will kind of keep track of. There are these small little devices like USB-based miners, things like that just simply don't have the hash rate. And believe it or not, the amount of work that the pool has to do on that little USB miner is the same as a multi terahash industrial miner. So it's the same amount of work. So
Okay.
I'd prefer for the pool to work on miners that legitimately have a chance of finding a block.
For sure.
That's why I set the minimum difficulty to 2,000.
Cool. That makes sense. That makes quite a bit of sense, really. And I was curious on the how the difficulty auto adjusts with the ASICs, like a large industrial miner ASIC. You know,
it's the same thing. You know, the difficulty will adjust as needed based on the hash rate that the pool sees.
Cool. Okay, that
I have a
makes
good
sense.
article as well about what is difficulty, what is
Nice.
with regard to Bitcoin, and so that's a good one to read. I'll share that with you after the podcast as well, but you might include that in there as well.
Definitely been enjoying that lower difficulty adjustment here the last 2 months. It's every single week or 2 weeks it seems like my miners have been getting more and more profitable. So that I like. I mean, obviously solo mining is different, but I have some hosted miners, and every time that hash rate isn't going parabolic, it's like, yes, more Bitcoin.
Yes.
You've got to set up a solo day, like one day a month, where you take them off of a public pool and you point everything to solo and see at least what your best difficulty that you hit is.
Or just throw one miner on, if I don't know how much rental you're doing or how many miners you have.
I got 4. I got about a petahash. So
okay, yeah. I mean, maybe just carve out a small percentage and just ride it and see what happens. Of course, it's up to you.
I'd have to, because it's hosted, I'd have to like go to the host and be like, hey, can you divert this miner to this pool and this and this and that?
They should be able to do that though. It's just a matter of changing the pool setting. So
me and Joel have talked about this, but the site that he has his stuff hosted at, they've been pretty good about repairs and whatnot, but the lack of communication in that sense, like for our hosted clients, any like at the drop of a hat, it's like, oh, you need pool access, or you need like a monitoring system, like you need access to Foreman or Brains OS, whatever, or not Brains OS, but Brains Manager.
Maybe the difference, Kalen, is you've got you know, you have like one major
For
group of
sure.
investors
That
that
is
owns your facility, and then you know if you are doing a hosted mining, it's going to be for a specific client. Imagine running a hosted farm, or maybe you have like 500 different clients, and some of them might have eight, you know, two or three of them might have 80% of your hash rate, and then you've got a bunch of people in there who've got like maybe they have like a 100 machine or something. You know what I mean? Like some small amount. But the problem is 80% of your customer service and your problems are going to come from the smallest. I mean, this is just
yeah.
math distribution. So I
How
think that's the challenge, is how do you manage that at scale?
I personally, what my solution would be is just make everybody pay the 60 cents a month per miner and set up a Foreman account that they'd have access to 24/7. And as long as their miner's hashing, they're getting billed. It helps with billing because you can see uptime and that sort of stuff. I would set that up as like defaults because I was just gonna say when he was saying switch a miner, if you had something like Lux or Brains or I think even Vanish installed on there, instead of pointing a whole miner to it, you could take 200, like take 50 T of one of your miners, separate
Yes.
that out to solo pool, and then have the other 200 T still hashing away where you could set it up where you're at least making all your money back on it, but any profit that you would have made is going directly to solo mine. I think that would be a fun way to get into the solo mining because I've played around with the bidax a little bit, and during that crazy storm that wiped out half of Texas for 2 nights, like on the difficulty adjustment, either that or they were trying to game the system. That's when I got that big 4.4G difficulty.
Pure luck,
But
though. It's pure luck.
yeah,
It's pure luck. Yeah,
e-
but
even in that, so it's still luck,
it
even if the
it,
difficulty's down.
it doesn't matter what your
Huh,
miner doesn't know and doesn't care about the how other people are doing.
really?
What you hash is independent of the rest of the network. So it's just pure luck. That's all it is.
So as difficulty goes down, I won't see an increase in like that's not a like
No,
baseline
no, it's
fact.
just think of the difficulty as you're doing a high jump, okay? You're a high jump competitor, okay? And all they did is they lowered the bar a little bit for you to jump all over that bar,
But you're
okay?
still jumping the
But
same height.
yeah, you still have to use the same muscles. You have to everything. It's still on you, you know. If you can't jump over that bar, guess what? You're not gonna clear the
Huh.
hurdle. So
I did
yeah,
not know that.
yeah. What's going on in the rest of the network is independent of what kind of best share your miner is going to get. All
Cool.
that matters is that if your miner gets a best share that is exceeds that lowered bar, congrats, it worked out well for you.
Okay. Learning
That's
something. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really fascinating. You know, again, you learn something every day in Bitcoin, and it's endless. You know, the more you learn about it, the more you realize there's so many little directions. So, one thing I want to talk about is, you know, you started a solo mining pool. Have you ever had the ambition to do like like a large pool where people do, like you have all these different pool models, and I know there's
Yep.
four, and I forget if it's like FP, PS, and
Yeah.
again, that stuff goes over my head a little bit, but
I've thought about it. For now, like I do have a day job. This is really just something I do for fun, and it's been a great experience. That's why I started with solo. Um, you know, switching into a more industrial pool setup that supports where people are living and dying by uptime and everything else would change the model a little bit, and I'd have to consider that one. It does interest me though, and I still believe that the principles I used in the building Atlas pool are applicable to the bigger pools as well. And in fact, a lot of the bigger pools, they get better with regard to latency and availability, but I still believe that what I'm doing is unique and it might be interesting to some of those bigger miners.
sounds like
For
an
sure. Yeah.
opportunity for you to go after. So what would that makes me think. So what does it even take to build a pool at that level?
You have to be able to deploy it, globally. You have to be able to operate it and build it in such a way that it's self-healing. One thing about Atlas Pool is that if there's a problem with any Stratum server anywhere in the world, it's just automatically withdrawn from service, and the miners will just connect to the next closest Stratum server. It's all
That's
automatic. So, there really is no concept of downtime, knock on wood, because the miner will just simply reconnect to the next best Stratum server. and the pool has had 100% uptime since I basically built it. I had one blip when it first started, but let's say that doesn't count.
There's
But
never 100% uptime,
Yeah,
right?
one blip. How dare you?
yeah, but it's been pretty good. And I will say though that there's some of the other pools out there, and they will shall remain nameless, don't have 100% uptime. They,
For sure.
they definitely have downtime. Now you can set up a secondary pool in your miner config, and I would encourage everybody to do that anyways. But at the same time, like, why connect to a pool that has known uptime issues?
Yep. Yeah. The only other pool that I have like any experience with that uses something similar with like the auto adjusting is Luxor's pool. But they're still only across like 3 regions. I think it's the US, EU, and like Russia or something is all they've got. And they just recently swapped over to, instead of having the like .us, .eu, you just put in the Luxor global, and then it connects you to whatever's closest.
Yeah.
But even in a situation like that, like I guess my next best would be the EU, which would still be insanely slow. So having it on each continent would still be a huge difference, especially at scale. Like if you're pushing over an exahash, you don't want that to be left behind in a whole bunch of stale shares.
Yeah, and just to talk about where Atlas Pool is located, it's located in 2 places in America, in Oregon and Virginia. In Europe, it's in London and Berlin. It's also in India. It's in Hong Kong, so Southeast Asia. It's also in Sydney, Australia, and Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then finally in Cape Town, South Africa as well. So it's in every continent. And then because it uses the AWS network, it actually uses the whole AWS network, which is 100 plus points of presence around the world. So really, no matter where you are in the world, you're entering the AWS network at the closest point, and then you kind of have the fast lane to the Stratum server. That's really how it works. That's another benefit of using Atlas Pool.
And you don't, I assume you're renting like the server space or
It's
like the.
I'm using AWS, so I pay as you go.
Yeah, the whole internet, everything is built off AWS. It's literally like the backbone. I mean, I'll give you an example. All of the businesses I own in a different industry, we use AWS for everything: software deployment, hosting. Everything is off AWS. It's like, it's kind of like the highway super system.
And yeah, it works well for what I'm trying to do, and AWS is deployed in multiple regions around the world, and so I can deploy the Stratum server wherever AWS's footprint is.
And that's just cloud, like
that's cloud,
right?
That's cloud computing. Yes, that's cloud computing. Yep.
So back to, if you were to go into like the world of big pools for large miners and, shares and stuff, do you know the difference between the 4 payment models, off chance?
I mean, I don't have it memorized. I know that there are different ones. I know most of them are based on, the amount of work you do, and you get paid. Some guarantee that you get paid no matter whether they're finding blocks or not, but then the pool takes, a little bit of an extra cut on that, or you just, it depends on how lucky the pool is, and you get paid accordingly based on the amount of work you're doing. So yeah, I know there are different models out there.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my head around that. I know like one is like an insurance policy where they take the risk up front. And I was asking a couple of these guys at the Bitcoin conference, and some of these people have like large, backings where it's like, oh yeah, we have a certain amount of float if we don't find a block on the pool and we need cash and capital to pay out.
That's right. Yeah, they smooth out the variance, and they take an extra little bit of cut, to give you that guaranteed payment as well. Because if you want a consistent payment, then some pools will offer that with the payment model that they have, but they have to have the Bitcoin in reserve to keep paying all their miners if they're unlucky enough to go through a bad stretch of not finding blocks.
Yeah, and another thing that was like really interesting was some people even use, just like some large Bitcoin companies, where they, like the public companies where they have, the cash flow matters month to month because you have investors, and, these people have a far greater scale than, it has to cash flow. So what they do is like options. Like we had the Wintermute guys on, and they were talking about how people use options trading to hedge their Bitcoin treasuries and use it as a part of their strategy. And it was interesting because then I met, I forgot which pool, but one of the pool people also had a thing like that where they were using, options hedgings like an insurance policy would to mitigate mitigate risk, where you have capped upside and capped downside, and you can stay within a certain variance to smooth that risk out. It was really fascinating. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the pools take a percentage as a fee, and some charge more than others. I don't think in the grand scheme of things, unless you're the biggest pools, you're not making an insane amount of money, right? So a lot of these pools also offer ancillary services to try to supplement what they're trying to do as well.
Yeah, like with Lux has their hands, and I believe they were firmware, and then the pool is just kind of like an added nicety that
That's
they
right.
do. It's not a crazy amount of income coming in for them for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing, I encourage people to try sometimes. I admit that I don't do as much work with the big industrial miners. I don't even know, do they even show the reject rate, the rejected shares rate on those
Yeah,
devices?
it will depending on the operating system. Like I think some kind of like hide it, like some aftermarket, so it's kind of more in the background.
So
But
one thing I always encourage people to try is connect to Atlas Pool and see if your rejection rate goes down a little bit, and because of the latency story. And there even is there are some miners out there like the NerdQX, which is a 4 ASIC solo miner for home. You can split between two pools as well, and that's the perfect A/B test to test how latency is impacting rejected shares. I tell people do 50% on Atlas pool, do 50% on a different pool, and compare their overall rejected share rate. And don't
what
believe
are you
me,
seeing
try it yourself.
for reject, like percent wise? What is your
It
expected on
depends.
that list?
It depends where you are in the world, and lots of factors. But with Atlas Pool, I would like to say that rejected share rate is typically 0.05% or less.
It's not bad, like
Yeah,
at all. I feel like if you get like really zero point 0.8 to 1.4, that doesn't even raise an eyebrow for me on a public pool or on a
point
pool.
point 0.14. Did you mean 0.14?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Point one.
look up mine right now on I use PowerPool for my public miners, and I love PowerPool. I think Ruben runs a great pool over there, and the fee that I pay on it is crazy. But I don't know what the rejected share rate is on my miners, so I'm kind of gonna try to look that up right now. This is actually
If it's stock firmware, it should show it like where it on the main dashboard where it shows your pools listed. You should see your accepted and stale shares.
Now remember, Atlas Pool is only doing solo mining right now. So
Yeah.
if you're trying to make Sats, going to Atlas Pool is not going to help you. But at least
Is
for
that
solo mining, it's worth trying.
is that just cost basis? Like it would just be like pretty expensive to have a whole bunch of people pointing their larger machines over there with
I would
the
just
odds.
I would have to build it out. Right now, it's just not built to support the other payment schemes.
Cool.
But it certainly interests me. It's something I've thought about. Something I'll look into maybe in the future.
all right. I got the data here. One of my miners has been down ever. I have miner hosted in Iowa, which is nice. They're moving them to Arkansas literally right now. So all my miners are down, unfortunately. But I have data on 3 of them. And I mean, I've been hashing, I want to say, for probably a year and a half straight on these. So
Damn.
I've got a 0.08% rejected on one of them, a 0.08 on another, and a 0.11 percent on the third one. I don't know what the fourth one is because they need to hook the dang thing back up and get it back. Kalen, go fix my miner.
Yeah, so I have the math on this. Let me just pull it up real quickly. So like 0.1% is an equivalent of 8.8 hours of downtime of no mining per year. Okay, so just 0.1% is 8.8 hours of wasted work
That's kind of wild.
per year, and it's just pure math, right? And so of course you want to lower it as much as possible, if all things being equal, right? There are other things you have to consider as well, but the point is, like, if all things being equal, yeah, reduce that rejected share rate, because if I told you that if you mine to pool A and and I'm gonna physically turn off all your miners for 8.8 hours a year, and if you mine to pool B and I'm only gonna turn it off 1 hour a year, which one are you gonna pick? And it's the same concept.
Depends on the fee, but yeah.
That's right. Well, the fee, but then you have to, what's the opportunity lost and that as well. Yeah.
For sure.
I
Yeah.
was trying to just think of it in like, well, if you've got a petahash running, you're basically leaving like a bitax on the table constantly. That if just by not you just if you could get down to the like 0.05 opposed
Yeah.
to the 0.14 or 0.12 that he was talking about, you
Yeah. I mean,
decent hash rate.
there are people that are like in South America, for example, there were some solo miners that were, connecting to pool servers in the United States in order to connect.
Yeah.
And then when I set up a Stratum server in Brazil, their latency went from 300 milliseconds to 15 milliseconds. So it's like a
Wow.
20-fold increase
That
or
reminds me
decrease.
of playing video games online back in the day. You had like a ping of like 300, and like you would move the mouse and like and then you'd shoot, and by then they've already been because somebody would be
Yes.
in there with like a ping of 90.
Yeah.
So I relate to that. I mean, I don't know if that's a problem anymore in modern internet infrastructure, but in the late 90s when I was in college.
Well, the latency problem does impact rejected shares. That's what I'm trying to say. So the higher, it's not the only factor, but it is a
Mhm.
factor. And so just try it out. Like, if you're solo mining right now to one pool, look at the rejected shares on your miners and then point it to Atlas pool and see if you see a difference.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Well, I just switched over this morning, like I said, so I'm definitely excited to see the difference between that and public pool. And it took me 30 seconds to figure out how to do it. Like I said, and I'm glad we were able to verify it here live that I didn't screw anything up. But
Well,
except for the sub
That's the
ID.
whole reason he wanted to do this pod, is just to double check his work real quick. It's like, hey, is this right?
I mean, then ultimately, once you're on the site, you can just go to the My Dashboard link and you just punch in your wallet address, and then you should be able to see statistics on how your miners are doing.
That's so cool. One thing you mentioned earlier, you were talking about mining through local nodes. Do we maybe want to talk about that for a little bit here before we wrap up?
Sure. What specific question?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've heard of people doing this. I mean, just how do you even set that up? Like, what does
It's
that look like?
Listen, these days it's relatively easy. There are devices out there, Umbrel and Start9 and others, where you can just purchase them, install it in your home network. It runs a Bitcoin node and the local pool server there, and then you just point all your miners to it, and you're truly sovereign. You're not dependent on an external pool to get the block templates because you're generating the block templates on your own. So that's definitely on the sovereignty path. That's the most sovereign solution, and that's great. It's a great way to learn. I'm not. If you want to go that path, absolutely go ahead and do it. But it does. There's an added cost. There is some amount of technical know-how you need to get it set up. They do make it pretty easy. Let me be clear here. I don't want to say it's super hard, but the point is there's a technical component to it, and not everybody wants to do it. Some people just want to get a few miners and just try it out, and they're okay with it's not like you're paying anything up front to use Atlas Pool. You're only paying a small percentage if a block is found. So a lot of people, for those people who want that, that's what I built the pool for. But if you want to do local node, go for it. That's your prerogative.
I mean, even if I catch myself doing the same thing, like when it comes to what I'd consider like simple minor repairs, opening them up, pulling out boards and stuff, is just being like super, just know exactly what it is, what can break, what can't break, what you could be doing wrong. The idea of setting up like your own node to a lot of, even though it's literally just plug and play with some of those devices like the Start9, it's that is too big of a hurdle for a lot of people to get over in their heads, to being like, no, there's no way I could set this up or I could do this. It's cool to see how you obviously you're coming from a background of like networking and being a network engineer, but taking it from that field and being like, oh no, what's this Bitcoin stuff, and actually taking that leap to get into it is cool. It's something that I would encourage more people to attempt to just do something within the network,
Yeah.
build something.
Yeah, it's a good way to learn again, and it definitely moves the needle to the fully sovereign route
For sure.
at a small added cost and some amount of technical complexity as well. But in the end, for those people who don't want to go that route, or they just want to get a couple miners and try it out, then they can go with the pool as well.
All right. So we've talked a lot about mining pools today. I think it's been incredibly informational, if that makes sense. I've learned a lot is what I'm trying to say today. And it's like my brain is like, whoa, So, maybe one fun question here before we wrap up. What do you think about Bitcoin price? Where we go? Do we want to speculate? We in a mid-cycle correction right now? Are we going up, or are we going to drop down to, to like 40,000 and then go up?
I truly don't know, right? I think if you ask me, whatever I say, it's probably going to do the opposite. So I'm afraid to say anything. I don't know, but I believe in Bitcoin. I believe it's going to be there for the long term, and that's why I'm interested in supporting the network and supporting the community as well.
You said you just started with the pool thing back in October of 25. Is that all your crypto or Bitcoin? Like,
No, I've been involved. I mean, I owned Bitcoin, but I hadn't been mining it per se. I did mine back in the day. I did mine Ethereum with GPUs,
cool.
so I did do that for a
He's a
while
real
as
OG.
well. Yeah, so I've done some amount of mining with Ethereum and other coins that I won't talk about, but right now I really prefer to focus on Bitcoin.
Understandable. I mean, we
Yeah.
hold the same kind of perspective here at Bitcoin mining world, where it's like, especially when it comes to mining, unless you're treating it as just like this speculative gambling thing, it's like if you're trying to turn like mining into a business, it's Bitcoin. It's the most consistent payouts constantly.
Yeah.
I think last year really took the wind out of the sails out of the altcoin crowd. Everybody was waiting for it to just pop up, and it just didn't. And I mean, I have a little bit of Ethereum I've been trying to rotate out of for the longest time, and I just want to sell it and convert it to Bitcoin. But if I sell it now, I'll take a loss on it. So it's like bothering the internal maxi in me. And I'm like, I can't believe I bought this back in the day. Why am I holding this crap? So I forgot what I was going to say. Something about I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Kalen, you were right about when we were talking earlier this year that you said we're going to dip down and we're in a bear. You nailed the price, and I was wrong. I thought it was still going to go up after we were peaked at like 127 or whatever. I thought we were going to get a little bit higher, but where do you think the price is? Are we in a mid-cycle correction or what?
Bear's over. We're coming out of the bear. That doesn't mean you're not going to see it go down anymore, but I think the bear market started in August, way before anybody, way before that crazy day when we were out at NABS. I can't remember what month that was, but I think November-ish, where there was just that day where the alts got obliterated when 2 minutes, everything was down 80%. I think the bear market started after the bull market peaked, and if you compare it historically to how long bear markets last, we're now starting to come out timeline wise. So do I think we're going to go to 250K next cycle? No. But could you see something like 180, 210, in that range? I think that would be more conservative and reasonable approach into something. I think as there gets more and more money, I don't think we're going to into the asset class, these doubles every cycle are going to start going away, but up, I guess, from this point. I'm kind of I'm starting to DCA in again, very low amounts without any too high risk. But
we got to get you some miners, man. It's the best DCA because no matter if you have cash or not coming into your life, because how it is. Sometimes you're like, oh, I've got some dry powder, I'm gonna go buy some Bitcoin or whatever, and then you have months where you're like, everything's slow and money's tight. My kid needs this, and I got to go do that, and maybe you don't know about that yet, but you will. And I'll tell you, that's where mining is beautiful, because on those months where you're just like, I don't want to spend any money right now, you get Bitcoin, and that's the best feeling because it forces you to DCA without without actually having the cash to do it.
It's just covering that electric bill, man. It's that. That's the big thing.
Exactly.
It's setting it up reasonably to something that you can afford. Is if you can add it to your utilities every month, it's just part of your budget. Then in a lot of cases it's more efficient to mine. It just all depends on cycle. I just stare at thousands of miners every day, and my hearing is getting worse and worse and worse. So if I can get those away from me for like 9 hours a day when I'm at home,
Let somebody else host it, man. All you got to do is swipe the check and get it done. So, Matt, where can people find Atlas Pool? Tell us.
Just check out atlaspool.io. All the information is there, including how to connect your miners there. And there's some interesting articles as well that explain things like what is Bitcoin difficulty. So take a look at that.
Thank you so much for your time. You've been very, very interesting, and you've given us a ton of knowledge.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for having me on the podcast here.
For sure. We'll catch you next time, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.